Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
So, I sampled a little bit of Corset 2019 this weekend.
Yeah? How'd that go for you?
Been better. Typically I'll say something like, been better, been worse, but that wouldn't be accurate.
I mean, it's a tough crowd. The pre-releases are usually pretty bloodthirsty in New York.
Oh yeah, I played the morning pre-release where I got a Spit Flame and a Lathnus. Is that the name of it? The 6 casting cost dragon.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty excited. I went a solid 1 and 3 in that one. And so I was like, you know what? I need to redeem myself. So I played in the afternoon pre-release also, where I got a Banefire. That one I went a solid 2 and 2. So for about 8 hours of actual gameplay, another 2 hours of deck building and sitting around, I would say I netted 2 packs. But
nice.
Net is an aggressively generous word.
Dude, but the memories will last a lifetime.
Yeah. No, probably not. This will be one of the ones that I forget, I think. But, I was actually surprised at a lot of the stuff I thought was pretty cool. I ended up playing Goblin Motivator, which is the 1/1 for R in both of my sealed pools. I thought that was pretty cool. Maybe, I don't know, it could be a constructed card if you have some medium or big size creatures. Giving things haste is sweet.
Do you think you're getting enough out of the tribal synergies to make this one worth it? Because, we've had stuff like this before, right?
Yeah, I think maybe I'm just, spoiled from playing sealed. If you could just give your 6/6 dragon haste or, your giant green creature haste, then it feels real powerful, but it's probably not good enough for actual constructed.
I don't know. It was okay before. It just needs a little push.
Yeah,
one of the challenges though isn't it giving your goblins? A lot of the goblins go wide rather than tall.
Yeah, that's exactly the problem. So I don't think you're going to cash in on a lot of tribal synergies playing Goblin Motivator in constructed because you're likely to play cards like Goblin Instigator, right? Which is like a 1/1 for 2 that makes another goblin. Giving that creature haste is not exciting. Giving the token haste is not exciting. And a really high-powered goblin like Siege Gang Commander, for example, there's no payoff to haste for that particular 5 casting cost card. You really want to give something like a dragon haste or like a big beast haste, and I just don't. I don't know if a card like Goblin Goon or something like that were legal and standard, it would work.
Pile Driver.
Oh, maybe Pile Driver. Yeah.
If they brought back a Pile Driver, yeah.
If they brought back a Pile Driver, I don't know. There's kind of a lot of goblins that go well with Pile Driver that are legal and standard right now. So I don't know. That might be a problem.
Yeah, I think they wouldn't really do protection from blue either. They'd be more likely to make a functional semi-reprint, but with some of this hexproof against blue and uncounterable or something like that, Yeah. Do the goblins have what it takes for tribal synergies at all, even if it's not the motivator?
In standard, maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of really good goblins. Between the last couple of sets. Obviously more or less the best card in standard is a goblin, right? But that guy doesn't need other goblins to be great, right? So and he also doesn't particularly give you payoff because his pips are so color intensive, right? So, we were talking last week about your, interest in that 2/5 runic Armasaur. The 1 green 2/5. Whenever an opponent activates the ability of a creature or land that isn't a mana ability, you may draw a card. I do actually. I was sketching out some potential just green decks. I had the Armasaur in the sideboard, or the one that I was working on most recently. But in my second sealed pool, I had the new Wood Elves. What's that thing's name? The Reclaimer.
Right, the elf one.
Yeah, and
Wood Elves, but for elves.
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought it was way.
Rejuvenator.
I was a little, unenthusiastic about that card to begin with, but it was great in my sealed deck. And one of the things that I thought might be good about it, because you're not locked into getting a basic, you can get, for example, a desert, and because the land comes into play tapped, you could get a cycling desert, perhaps, a land that wouldn't punish you for coming into play tapped. And you could play this card on the second turn. And I think that there might be some substantial payoff there. Like, for example...
Wait, how are you playing this on the second turn? Just Llanowar Elf?
Llanowar Elves, yeah.
Sure.
So I was thinking, like, just as an example, you can go, like, first turn Llanowar Elves, second turn Rejuvenator, flip over. It could be a cycling desert, could be a +3/+3 desert, whatever. But it's important to me to be able to get a desert in play, even if I'm playing, for functionally speaking, for want of a better term, mono green, because then I can get payoffs on Hour, which might otherwise be difficult. But there's such a big payoff on Giganotosaurus in this set, right? Like a 10/10 on turn 3 is...
Oh, my God.
I don't know. You don't like the... I was slaughtered by Giganotosaurus in 2 different games today. It's 10/10.
In sealed deck?
In sealed deck, yeah. It was his promo card, and he cast it both games. It was like all of his dual lands were green.
No,
I don't know what to tell
believe you. I get it, man. That does sound like it could be good if you can cast it in sealed deck.
You don't think it's good enough to cast in constructed? I think it seems good enough.
Maybe. I don't know, man. It could be. There's a lot of competition at 5, man. This is no Verdurous Gearhulk.
That's true. It's different, right? I mean,
it's not that different.
I mean,
it's different, but not different good.
Different. I mean, Verdurous Gearhulk has some substantial downsides. This guy isn't eating in a braid.
Yeah, that's true. Or leaving +1/+1 counters all over the place when he does eat a Vraska's Contempt.
Well,
no, it could be okay. It could be okay.
Like, I think that
I just don't think we want to warp our decks around it. If we can take advantage of him being a dinosaur, great. More power to us. Let's do it. Particularly if we can give him haste because of his dinosauriness. I just don't think we want to bend over backwards and rejigger our decks in order to get access to a 10/10 for 5.
I can respect that. I just think that, like, we're in a spot where finally there are enough dinosaurs that are just strong enough. I mean, I don't know. To me, Gigantosaurus is helping to push. I think the Armosaur is helping to push. Obviously there was already Lebrontodon, who was probably the best of the dinosaurs in Standard, right? That guy was already there. But if there's enough dinosaurs you actually want to play, then we can play the Rampant Growth. That's really the only thing that I care about, right? If you can,
that's fair.
Like, the Rampant Growth is
a really big advantage of the class. Yeah, no, that's true. That's fair.
So, that's just where my head was at. Like, and then it could be not dissimilar from maybe some of the ramping strategies from previous format, but instead of like having Vraska as the top of that black-green deck from the Pro Tour, literally the best thing it could do was Vraska in the main deck. I think we could just exploit having a bunch of lands and then go Walking Ballista, and if we need to have like a non-creature payoff, I think Sky Sovereign is an okay payoff. It's not so exciting to me because like a Planeswalker is, like Vraska will win the game by itself. Sky Sovereign won't. Sky Sovereign needs a little bit of help, but it's exciting the turn it comes out a lot of the time. So that's just kind of some stuff that I was thinking about. But green also has just great payoffs in green for Planeswalkers. I think both Reed and Nissa could be good, especially when we have like a critical mass of accelerators in the first 3 points on the curve, right? If we have potentially the Rampant Growth, Llanowar Elves, and the Elvish Rejuvenator, we are hitting 5 casting cost mega threats on turn 4 at like a pretty good clip now. So that wasn't happening before.
So do you think that the format's more likely to be about getting like big heavy hitters down rather than like grinding out 2-for-1s?
I think it's going to be a lot of stuff in flux, right? That there are a lot of different things that I can see coming up in the upcoming standard that are very exciting and very powerful. Some of them are very fast, and that they all can't be great at the same time, right? So if you're going to play, I'm just going to throw some cards you want to play out. So like if you're going to play a ton of 1/1s, right? Like Llanowar Elves and Rejuvenator and maybe small token creatures and stuff. Obviously, strategies like that are already somewhat held in check because of Goblin Chain Whirler. But, as we've seen, the format can shift away from Chain Whirler, if people are focusing on cards like Gifted Aetherborn or, massive amounts of advantage coming from the Scarab God, etc. And I think that, like, Green Ramp, especially when you're taking advantage of, is it the Carnage Tyrant, for example? That's really good against black-blue decks. You could the things that are good change depending on what everybody's playing, right? Like you could just go nutso and play either Heavy Angels or like a Cat Tribal deck that would, I don't know if it would be like so great against black-red, but you would annihilate mono-red, right? Like the fast mono-red deck playing against a deck that's nothing but lifelink cats.
No, but see, the thing is that the red decks are not, I don't know, man. The red decks, it's not like this is like a burn deck or some kind of like red deck wins. A lot of the cats are just as vulnerable to Chandra and Glorybringer as anything else.
Yeah, but
are you sure that's the right way to fight them?
I mean, you could easily be in a situation where just a general noun, right? You could be pacifisming their Hazoret, right? You could be pacifisming their.
I don't think pacifism on Hazoret is a very good play. It's okay, but like they can still do it.
Yeah, but
they can still play a second Hazoret later.
Yeah, I mean, but like cards like a pacifism against, for example, a Phoenix, that's like really, really good. And it's not that the red deck doesn't have a powerful high end. It's arguably its high end is better than the white deck. Like Glorybringer is hard to top, but like all the early to mid game cards, the white deck just covers the red deck, right? Like
really? What about Scrap Heap Scrounger?
It doesn't even block. I think
know.
The white deck's going to be on offense. You don't think? I mean, like, all these cats are going to be...
I think it's going to need to be.
It's going to be so annoying. Like, Bomat Courier versus, like, tons of these, like, lifelink cats and rebuying cats and first striking cats and 4/4 cats for 4. Like, I think that this would be really annoying for the mono-red deck. Now, I think the black-red deck is probably in great position to interact profitably against this kind of a deck, right? That deck is way less about just mono offense, way less about just dealing a bunch of damage. It's got tons of vectors for card advantage. It can disrupt the opponent. It has non-damage based removal. It's not gonna. It's like, oh no, he played a 4/4, right? Like the mono red deck might have trouble just removing a 4/4. That's less.
What are you talking about? We're talking about the mono red deck with Chandras, Glorybringers.
Yeah, but it doesn't have. It does. Some of them don't have Chandra in the main deck, right? And obviously, Glorybringer's great against 4/4 cat. No question.
And this isn't even counting if anybody adds Spitflame to their deck.
Well, Spitflame, I do not think is going to be a main deck card in mono red. Now, I think that card is awesome. I think it's going to have a nice little career under its belt when all said and done for standard, but I don't think it's going to be a main deck card in mono red. Mono red deck often doesn't even play a Braid, right? They're playing like Shock and Lightning Strike because they want to be able to go upstairs if they have to.
Sometimes.
Yeah. They're
I think a Braid is still pretty popular, but...
Sure. I mean, they typically have access to all 4 copies, but I'm just saying, like, a lot of them don't play it in main deck.
Yeah.
I mean, right? Remember last week we were looking at the one that has like the Wizard's Lightning version. That guy's just all about burning face.
Yeah, and that's true. I do think though that I mean, I might just be in for the cats anyway. Like so,
just for the love. Just for, like, petting
and the beatdown. So, like, the synergy with the life gain aggro thing is not too bad either. Because if you've got Leonin Vanguard, the new cat soldier, the white for a 1/1 at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures, Leonin Vanguard gets +1/+1 until on a turn, and you gain 1 life. So, the big thing with Leonin Vanguard, I mean, it's nice getting another 1-drop, and we talked about this briefly, but I think that there's a few ways to actually try to not lose to the Chain Whirler. Right? Like, if you're going to be playing stuff like this and Sacred Cat, that's all well and good, but can we, maybe pick up some kind of Anthem effect? Specifically the tribal Anthem from Ixalan Block, the City's Blessing one, where you guys are also going to get Vigilance, because the Vigilance is actually not too bad with the cats either, particularly the Pride Sovereign.
I hadn't thought about going in that direction. I don't know. You're probably right. Like, I just hate taking the turn off to cast the Anthem.
It's not even a turn, though, because it's like, it's got haste, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, you drop your material, and then the Anthem is like your trumpet blast, or whatever, right? Except for it sticks around.
Well, and I think that, it's not, it's not nothing that if you drop the new 4/4 cat that you were alluding to earlier,
Leonin War Leader.
Yeah, if that one's a 5/5, that's a big difference.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, you could play, like, Sacred Cat on the first turn, right? And then play the 2/2, and then just get in there, and then you're already getting paid off, right? Like, if you went first, I think you're, like, in a good spot there, right? Like, that's about where you want to be.
I mean, you could do a lot worse than just a curve like that. It's kind of nice when you can actually spend your turn 3 playing another cat, so that you can get with the vanguarding sooner than later. But you gotta set yourself up against the Chain Whirler ASAP.
Is there stuff that you might want to play? Let's say you were going to play a Cat's tribal deck in other colors. Like, my mind is gravitating.
Well, I like green.
I like green.
Of course, I think you need Pride Sovereign. I mean, Radiant Destiny and Pride Sovereign and Regal Caracal are a bunch of nice tribal rewards, but is there more that you really want from green besides just a few pump spells?
I was thinking Blossoming Defense was high on my list.
See, it might be the case that Blossoming Defense is right. It's such a good card. It's probably right to play a couple, but like, you do have access to a couple options that normally nobody would ever get to, like, other decks just don't normally have access to. Specifically from Amonkhet block, the green-white pump spell from Hour of Devastation. The
Aftermath one? Appeal to Authority?
Exactly. I think Appeal to Authority, in conjunction with stuff like the pouncing, being able to, like, double strike with Appeal to Authority, and being able to Appeal to Authority, keeping that pressure on so that you can actually be the aggressor, and Appeal to Authority with all the lifelink creatures.
I mean, just like the +X side, like with the lifelink creatures. I mean, look, this is very matchup dependent, right? Like, this kind of stuff isn't particularly scary for a blue-white or a blue-black deck, but getting nuked by a giant lifelinker 1 or 2 times, like, even the black-red deck has to respect that, right? Like, also, it gives you options for just, like, one-shotting a planeswalker.
Yep.
Well, a lot of the time they're like, oh, Chandra's my plan, or Karn's my plan.
One of the things I wonder about for a twist on the cat tribal is actually fusing it a little bit with some of this power 2 or less quasi-tribal stuff, like specifically Mentor of the Meek and Militia Bugler.
So, man, Mentor of the Meek, I want this guy to be good, but it just seems so mana intensive to me. And he's so fragile.
True. But, I mean, don't you want to be bugling?
Like,
just look at the Regal Caracal and the Bugler. It's just not quite right.
The problem, I like the Bugler all right. It's just, I feel like where these guys sit on curve is just not, it's just not doing it for me, right? Like a Scrap Heap Scrounger trades with either of these cards, then obviously it's not really a fair trade. And they're within Lightning Strike range, possibly within Shock range. Like I worry about that, because if I'm gonna go a white creature deck, a small white creature deck, and I don't know how all the matchups are gonna play out, but in my imagination before I sit down at the tournament, like, I think that I'm going to be good against red aggro decks. That's one of the reasons I would play a white deck, right? Like, if I thought that I were playing against black-blue control or blue-white control all day, or ramp, I wouldn't choose a white creature deck. You know
fair.
what I mean? Like, I just,
yeah.
Like, I'm gonna either eat a Fumigate, or I'm gonna eat a Settle the Wreckage, and my opponent's gonna gain 7 life, or like, I'm gonna play a 2/3, and they're gonna play a 2/3 with both Death Touch and Lifelink. And then they're just going to hold me off until they get the Scarab God online, right? Like that's, like, I just don't even have tools to interact with decks like that. Like, if I'm going to go this direction, it's because, heads up, my creatures are great. Like, when I say great, I mean, like, they're at least...
Lyra Dawnbringer good?
Lyra Dawnbringer is very good. But at least trading at a profit, though, right? Like, obviously, Lyra Dawnbringer is insane. Don't block a Hazoret with it, though. Doesn't work that way.
No.
It looks like it works that way, though, right? Like, it's very seductive.
Sure. It does seem like you might be able to do that, but I wouldn't. Actually, this is a little bit different of a direction, but do you think that that you might actually be able to get a little bit of land out of the graveyard action in Standard?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So, yeah, I think that there's an engine to be had around Crucible of Worlds. Like, I could just imagine a situation where I had Wayward Swordtooth, which is, that 5/5 dinosaur for 3 mana that lets you play 2 lands per turn. That is the City's Blessing. Crucible of Worlds. And then either Field of Ruin or Evolving Wilds. Like, you just get so much card advantage, right? Like, and it doesn't seem that difficult to set up. The cards have some amount of utility each, right? So just playing, like, people just play Evolving Wilds, like, that's the thing that they do, right? And if
that's
you have
true.
Same with Field of Ruin, right? And if you have Crucible of Worlds in conjunction with them, that is itself a minor engine. Like, you're not getting so much card advantage, but you're getting some. But once you have, like, the Swordtooth as well, like, it seems to me like that would be a bonkers amount of card advantage in a short period of time, as long as nobody just, like, disrupted you. And it's easy to get that stuff in play. That's the thing. Like, there's certainly matchups where your opponents are not going to be in a good position to remove the Crucible of Worlds, or, like, they're generally unwilling to remove the Swordtooth. But, like, if you had Evolving Wilds, for example, you'll get the City's Blessing very quickly.
Would you want to use Ramen-Up Excavator as well?
Excavator is not a card I had initially considered, but that guy has that's a modern staple, right? It's played in the green-white company deck. The green-white company deck that has, like, Aven Mind Sensor and all the Ghost Quarters, right? Like, I mean, they don't play a lot of copies of it, but it's very impressive in that deck. So, possibly, like, I wonder how you'd lace it together. I guess, like, this is definitely a deck that that really likes playing with Llanowar elves, right? Like these cards.
Well, yeah.
Well, I guess they all like playing with Llanowar elves, but I mean, like just their point on curve, right? Like they get out quickly, and then you can start building your advantages. But yeah, but now that I think about it, I think Excavator's probably great in this deck. This is a good example of a deck that like it's not so nakedly great against red. It's probably okay against red. Like these creatures are good at least slowing red down. What it's great at is if the format is kind of mid-range-ish or like grindy, you could just get a massive advantage over the course of a short period of turns and then just start doing awesome things that are very difficult to disrupt because they're coming from a part of the deck that, it's like either you're just getting land payoffs or you could get to City's Blessing for Arch, something like that, like very, very easily.
This may sound a little silly at first, but I mean, do you think it's crazy to Muldrotha the Gravetide?
Whether I think it's crazy or not, I love that card.
See, once you're going to the trouble of setting yourself up to be able to get enough land into your graveyard to be able to consistently fuel the Excavator, and then you've got creatures like Excavator, and you've got artifacts like, I mean, if somebody abrades your Crucible, you could just end up with lots of good types and then drop Muldrotha and actually get several cards a turn from it.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy at all. Because that card it's another example of a card. It's well costed. Even if you're not going bonkers with its card advantage, it's still like a good creature. It's still a big creature. And, I mean, how many extra cards do you need to get off of a creature of that size for that cost before before you're willing to step back at your career this game and say, hey, man, that was a good deal. Right? You don't need that many.
Maybe two.
Yeah, two you're already rich at 3.
I was going to say, I think 3 you're rich, 2 you're, defensively above. You're kind of out of debt.
I mean, yeah, one is okay, but that's like below average for a standard creature now. Like, standard creatures are like, I really want to get like the 3-for-1. That's what I'm really looking for.
What about Scape Shift, man? Do you think that's just too fancy? There's so many lands. If you Scape Shift and just go get, like, if you're playing some kind of Hour of Promise deck, if you Scape Shift, aren't you going to just be in like, so like for instance, you're not going to have any issues being able to attack with your Hostile Desert, right? And you could have any combination of deserts you wanted. I mean, you could set yourself up with, you've got like maybe one Arch of Arazka, and alternatively, and this is probably just, I mean, I don't know, probably not right, but like stuff like Memorial to Unity can like allow you to convert your lands back into business. But if you're playing some kind of a crazy deck, I still wonder if you could just like Cabal Stronghold, like actually just go, like instead of 2 Valakits and a bunch of mountains, go get 2 Cabal Strongholds and a bunch of swamps.
Okay, that normally I'm not going. That's not crazy. I'll entertain this one. That one seems tough for me, like because the construction of your deck is your pre-combo deck is just a different deck than your post-combo deck. You're like, tell you what, before I cast Scape Shift, I'm all green cards. But after I cast Scape Shift, I'm all black cards.
Time to Cabal Stronghold.
So, Deck, what I need from you is to not give me any colorless or black before I cast Scape Shift. And afterwards, don't trouble me with any green cards because I won't be able to cast them anymore. Right? Like, that's... Now, that one, not
a little ambitious.
That what I do like is anything that lets me get deserts, right? I need to get my deserts.
Sure.
Because I think that the payoffs from like just getting a bunch of free deserts, like when you have Hour of Promise, is pretty good. That's like very, very solid way to use an excess of mana. So I would be down for any amount of getting deserts. And then one thing that I actually found odd when I played in the RPTQ was actually running low on deserts in the late game because I had used so many. I wouldn't mind using Excavator or Crucible Worlds to rebuy deserts that I had already used, right? I converted a lot of deserts into killed planeswalkers, right? You know, just like give a token creature a buff, and then, you know, I actually sacrificed a lot of black deserts to do that, which was confusing if you weren't listening to the queue. Did you just give your zombie -2/-2? No, and I did not tap the correct amount of mana for that, even if that's what I wanted to do.
Dude, what about the Mending of Dominaria? Return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield and shuffle your graveyard into your library. If you scape shift the turn before the Mending...
I mean, you know that I'm going to be excited by this, right? The problem is, like, it just seems like dirtling.
Well, it's not dirtling.
So, like, I'll give you a parallel also in green, right? So, there's this new enchantment in Core Set 2019. It costs 3 mana, Colossal Majesty, right? So it's 2 to green. For at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a creature with 4 or greater, draw a card. Okay, I'm talking about playing in Sealed Deck, right? So Sealed Deck is, of the competitive formats, the clunkiest, right? It's much clunkier than Draft typically, and certainly clunkier than most constructed decks, right? I would get out my Colossal Majesty on turn 3. You would be able to get it out on turn 2 in Standard sometimes. And then I would have like a bunch of 4 and 5 casting cost creatures with 4 or more power. And I was still playing on my heels in Sealed Deck, basically getting a perfect curve on that. Where it's like, here's my Personal Howling Mine, here's a 4/3 creature, here's a 4/5 creature, here's a 5/5 creature. But just the fact that I had taken turn 3 off to play the Colossal Majesty while my opponent was playing just like a 2/2 flyer, and then you like, I think that's got to be so much worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think that card's always been better as a sideboard card. For once you're in matchups where there's going to be a lot of creature removal, it's sort of, you know, it's one of those cards that you board in order to be able to grind.
But what I'm saying is, like, the parallel that I'm trying to draw is that if your strategy is scape shift into Mending, right? Like, you're like, that's just hella dirtling, right? Like, that's not a sideboard package, right? We got to figure out like a payoff for that. So, I mean, what's the lethality of this? It can't just be card advantage.
Well, if you got enough ramen up excavators and crucibles, I don't know, man. I'm trying to figure out how to escape the pull towards just playing good stuff.
Just like all red all the time?
Well, no, it doesn't have to be red, because there's good stuff in all the other colors. Right? Like, I think the blue-black good stuff is very clearly at a high point in Standard right now. And it does all right with Core Set, I guess, 2019. I mean, once you're just on the Scarab God plan with just like lots, like a reasonable curve of black removal and some undercosted threats, and we already talked last week about the implications of a little bit of Liliana action and some of the zombies, but I don't know, man. Are there any real strong linear incentives in this set that get you wanting to step away from the mold of picking a color or two and then playing the best cards and a mix of removal? Wow.
I mean, I think that
maybe Liliana's Contract, our preview card.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking. I don't know if this answers that particular question, but I had the gears turning on a card that I thought was pretty interesting. It's super cheap, which is one of the things that I look for, and it seems like it could get you a lot of advantage. right? So, what do you think about Dryad Greenseeker? So, 1 and a G for a 1/3 creature Dryad. So, Omen Speaker, size and casting cost, but his ability is tap, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. Like, if you have some way to... I mean, I don't even know if you have to have some way to manipulate the top card of your library. It's just like, if it's hitting, and it'll hit, 40% of the time, even in the dark, this is a personal Howling Mine that can block.
Dude, have you ever met a 1/3 for 2 you didn't like?
No. I love them. I especially love the ones that draw cards. I don't know. Does he think... What's the size on Jushi Apprentice? He's 1/2, right?
Dude, what about Druid of the Cowl? 1/3 tap for a green? Because then you can just play your 4s on 3 and your 5s on 4.
I mean, he's just a Llanowar elf.
Yeah?
I mean, I played him in one of my sealed pools. He's good, and I mean, I don't know. I don't think this card's... I don't know. It's not fair for me to say this card is not good enough for Constructed when I was just talking about potentially playing Dryad Greenseeker, right? Right? This card is clearly...
That's true.
Clearly in line with Dryad Greenseeker.
Also true. I got a sleeper for you, though. This is one that I've not really heard anybody talking about, but Stitcher's Supplier, black for a 1/1 zombie. When it enters the battlefield or dies, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. Stitcher's Supplier is such a good way to self-mill for your God Pharaoh's Gift deck.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Nobody's talking about this card. I don't know. It's not... This one isn't singing to me. Yeah,
what? Okay, so, people... How much success have people been having with, creatures that require you to spend your energy, like Minister of Inquiries? Minister of Inquiries even has to untap, right? This guy does it on the way in automatically, and if they kill it, they can't just kill it to stop it, and if it ever gets to chump block, you get to do the thing again. And it's even got good types. Being able to,
it's got great types for this kind of a battle plan.
But isn't this just so efficient of a way to stock your graveyard really fast?
Yeah, I guess its EV is, above 3, right, for cards in graveyard. But I don't know.
Well, you're going to get, on the average, better than 1 per each way. Maybe 1.5 each way. No, maybe even more. But I don't know, man. What more do you want other than a 1-drop that mills this hard? I don't know. Isn't this? I'm just trying to wrap my head around why this wouldn't be just really good for a God Pharaoh's Gift.
Maybe you're right. I don't know. For me, my reservation to begin with is just in colors, right? Are people playing Black God Pharaoh's Gift decks? Maybe would you play Black God Pharaoh's Gift because of this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's just... that's not all. I'm wondering about playing some kind of a zombie God Pharaoh's Gift deck sort of hybrid. They're not exactly perfectly overlapped, but Graveyard Marshal, a lot of the cards that work well with a God Pharaoh's Gift deck are going to work well with Graveyard Marshal, and I think that card's just a good card. And then if you actually can play some kind of, I know it sounds kind of corny, but Death Baron, 1BB, 2/2 zombie wizard, skeletons you control, and other zombies you control get +1/+1 and have death touch. So, when you bring the creatures back as zombies, they get the tribal bonus from Death Baron. And Death Baron's an excellent card to get back as a 4/4. But also just making all these random zombies have death touch is
That's like a real way to set yourself up to do a lot of trading up.
You know, Patrick, I think that you might just be right. Like,
and imagine if you ever get Walking Ballista back as a 4/4 zombie, and it just has Death Touch, and it's just a Walking Ballista.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. I was thinking, like, maybe you're just right. Like, before somebody played, like, a mono red or a base red God-Pharaoh's Gift deck, nobody was thinking about that, right? Like, people were all on the white-blue train, right? Maybe there's no reason that you couldn't have a largely black zombies or even straight black zombies God-Pharaoh's Gift deck. But these cards are great. Like, even... I mean, this isn't a zombie, but it seems like a kind of card that would really exploit a lot of the things we were talking about. Issereth the Awakener, right? Like, that guy's just pulling stuff out of the graveyard.
Well, I mean, so this card could be sweet, but, like, he's super vulnerable to getting the worst of it against lots of cheap forms of interaction. And even when he gets to do his thing, or she gets to do her thing, like, is it actually that much better than your primary engine?
No, but it's just on top of it, right? Like, I think...
See, the reason I like the Marshal, like the Graveyard Marshal, is that a 2-cost 3/2 is like such a different story than a 3-cost 3/3.
Marshal is clearly sweet. It's very good, no question. I mean, I think the Marshal might just be a better card than Issereth, right? Like, so 3/2 and 3/3 are very comparable to one another. A full colorless mana off that's like a mild difference, and it's arguable that the Marshal's rebuy ability is better, right? Because it's less conditional.
And it has haste.
Yeah. The difference, I'd say, is why not play both? Right?
Just because I think you've just got too many things to do with your mana. Like, I think you're going to want to be really low to the ground. And God-Pharaoh's Gift eats up some of that space. Gate to the Afterlife. Although, once you're actually looking at playing with Gate to the Afterlife, God-Pharaoh's Gift, Walking Ballista, and Scrap Heap Scrounger, it's probably crazy, but what if you played Phylactery Lich?
Oh my god.
Yeah, now we're talking your language.
I mean, like, Phylactery Lich should be so good. But you know what? I don't know. It, like... Huh. Like, if are you gonna make, like, a God-Pharaoh's Gift the Phylactery? People are gonna kill that thing anyway. Like, that's their goal in life. Right? They're not gonna let it sit, right?
I know. I don't know. It's probably not right, but
it was a good thought.
It depends on how much value we get out of it being a zombie. I don't know, man. Death Baron seems like it could actually be pretty sweet.
Yeah, I think, like, once you're getting a bunch of free zombie bodies, especially, Death Baron is gonna.
I'm also just, like, still super, super warm on Liliana's Mastery. Like, if we just kind of play like we're a zombie deck, and then we just happen to have God-Pharaoh's Gift and Gate to the Afterlife in our deck, we could also just splash blue. It's a super easy splash, and then we get to play the Scarab God, which is like kind of a sick zombie lord. And it's just good with God-Pharaoh's Gift type of shenanigans anyway.
Yeah, it goes right into the same strategy. Absolutely. Right? Like, if they shut off the one engine, you just have another endpoint.
And I mean, instead of in addition, it's just sometimes you're going to be able to drop it and just start hitting them for 5. Just because that many zombies in play.
And then that original guy, the Stitcher you were talking about, that's just a little oomph there, right? Like, you're just going to have a little extra ammunition for either direction that you go in. It's so little to set up.
Yeah, I don't know, man. This card looks so good to me. Like, isn't this card going to be good in Modern?
I mean, what strategy?
Dredge.
Oh.
You can even, like, if you want, like, if you play one of those Vengevine style of, if you go, like, a slightly more Vengevine-y direction, this guy's a 1-drop, which is obviously nice, but he's also a zombie, so he can, like, get back Dread Wanderer.
Oh, I mean, this card seems like it would be good with Vengevine, right? Like,
of course.
Vengevine loves having cheap teammates. It's like its favorite thing. So,
I bet this card shows up in Legacy. Not very often. Like, it's definitely it's like, that's a tougher crowd, but I'm telling you, this card just seems, I just don't get why people are not in for, like, milling 6 is Golgari Grave Troll.
Yeah, but
anyway, sorry.
It seems awesome, right? Like,
yeah.
From that perspective, right? Like, how many people are there who go second just so they can discard, right? Like, I mean, that's not something you want to be doing, right? But people do it and they're successful. Like, this is so much better than that.
And this guy's a great guy to get involved with, like, Viscera Seer if you're playing any kind of a deck along those lines.
I mean,
just being able to proc the thing early.
Unfortunately, he's not going to be eligible for Dread Return, but man, would he be good at Dread Returning. Right? Like, he'd be outstanding at that job.
Why is he not going to be eligible for Dread Returning?
Well, it just depends on which format you're in, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm wondering if this guy might show up in Legacy. I don't know.
Oh, I think that he is probably, I mean, like, if they have, in Legacy, they also have so many more available dredgers that you can play that are strong, like, in particular Golgari Grave Troll, that I think this card might be great. Like, you'd be way more all-in dredge, I think, if you played this, right? Like, you know how there's, like, the dredge decks that are like, here's my deck, I'm going to dump it all now, right? And there's other ones who are a little bit more conservative and have some spells they might want to cast.
This guy also looks like a great way to stock your graveyard for stuff like Liliana Untouched by Death. Just being able to get, like, just a critical mass of zombies in your deck at all, so that, like, when you're Liliana-ing, you can flip at least one. And the ultimate, you may cast zombie cards from your graveyard this turn. That works so well with 1-cost zombies, particularly those that mill you for, like, 6 cards.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty exciting, right? Like, you do the ability, you cast this card, you have so much mana untapped still at the point that you're, if you're casting this card early in the turn of rebuying, then it might just give you something even better than you were planning to do 30 seconds earlier.
Yep. So, I don't know, man. That's my sleeper hit for the set. Although maybe there is one other sleeper that it's weird to me that this one's a sleeper. And we talked about this a little bit last week, but why is everybody sleeping on Banefire?
Oh, man. Banefire, I am so high on this card right now. Like,
oh, yeah.
Like, I think that the only reason that they're sleeping on it is that they missed one thing, right? So, Banefire, one of the best Red X spells basically ever, right? So
oh, yeah, definitely.
It's RX for a sorcery. Banefire deals X damage to any target. If X is 5 or more, the spell can't be countered and the damage can't be prevented, right? So, I was thinking about this card to be played largely in a green deck. So it could be in a green-red ramp deck, could be in Jund, right? In a green deck. What if you just played it in the sideboard of whatever deck you're playing, right? It doesn't even have to be a base red deck. And I'll tell you, I mean, probably it's going to be most payoff in a red deck, but just say you were playing it in mono green, right? I know this is going to sound crazy. Or like a white weenie deck, and you just attacked a white player, right? And he settled the wreckage as you. You just go search for lands, right? In fact, you will easily be able to search for enough lands that Banefire will be X equals 5 or greater. And I know this is going to sound super far out. It's going to be best in red, but I'm just saying, you could do this in other colors. You could just search for a mountain, right? And your green deck, which was like mono green 30 seconds ago, is now casting a lethal Banefire. I think this is going to be the card that red aggro / black red sideboards against white control decks in early on in the upcoming format, because this thing undoes Settle the Wreckage so well.
Oh yeah, that was one of the big reasons why I'm so enamored with it. I think that the number of times where I've been playing red and somebody settled the wreckages me, and then I just have like 8 or 9 land, the ability to just Banefire them. Oh
yeah, the game's probably over right there, right?
Plus,
can't be countered, can't be prevented, right? It's so strong.
I think I mean I'm a big buyer in this, and I think that there's a lot of ways to use it a little bit more traditionally, but I'm also kind of curious about where the edges are. You had mentioned in a green deck, would it just be insane to play it in a Cabal Stronghold deck, where you've got 1 mountain, 4 Evolving Wilds, and then you've got maybe one of your some of your artifact mana produces multiple colors, and you're going to be drawing a lot of cards anyway, and then you eventually just Banefire them, and it's just an uncounterable way to convert the boatloads of mana you have into, like, game over.
I'm a little skeptical on that one, but it would work. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know why I'm skeptical, because Banefire just seems like it would be outstanding in so many different contexts, right? Like, I imagine other like control decks playing it, right? Like, you know, I think you mentioned this previously. It's a good thing to get with Search for Azcanta.
Yeah.
When you flip it over, right? Like,
very good.
You're sitting there with like 10 plus mana. They're not going to stop you, right? Like, here it comes.
Here's my early pick for the best home for Banefire. Hour of Promise. Dude, Hour of Promise with Banefire is so good. Just in terms of having a strat. I mean, first of all, obviously, Hour of Promise ramping you up to lots of mana, you know. But, like, the ability to do some incremental damage with, like, random zombies and with, like, you know, if you're ramping and playing some creatures, like you've got Jadelight Ranger or maybe you're Glory Bringing or whatever kind of red-green rampy stuff you're doing, but then you just have this end game that, and I think a lot of people don't fully appreciate how much Banefire for, like, being able to Banefire for 5 or 6, that's one thing, but you're allowed to just play 4 of this card. The combo of drawing Banefire and Banefire is like a really hard to stop endgame.
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine if somebody's sitting there they're playing Teferi, right? Their big plan is that they're going to try to tick up Teferi. And you just have some, like, you could just, like, what if you drew 3? You could just, like, start Banefiring them once you get up to being able to hit for, like, 5 or 6. I mean, heaven forbid you do any damage to them earlier on.
Well, just if you think about how, like, black aggro players are sideboarding Fleetwheel Cruiser to attack the fairy the turn that they tap out, you know, like, that seems like such a minor thing relative to just having access to Banefire. And so obviously Banefire is not necessarily going to be able to shoot Teferi down for only 4 mana, but sometimes it will, and other times you're just going to have this insane upside with no ceiling.
Oh, yeah. Now, what about, I mean, this is probably too much, but what if you played Jaya's Immolating Fire Inferno and Banefire because you're playing some kind of a weird Jaya Ballard deck? Right? Like, if you have Jaya Ballard, which, she, you know, the 5-cost Planeswalker that has the +1 of add red that can only be, you know, used to cast instant or sorcery spells.
Yep.
If you've got Jaya Ballards and Chandras and Jaya's Immolating Infernos and Banefires, I mean, I don't know. You could be doing something. You're cooler on that?
I'm cooler on that because I just think 4 Banefires to begin with, if you're going to start at 4 Banefires, is kind of a lot. The reason that
I'm starting at 4.
The reason that I think it's acceptable, though, in addition to what you were saying, where you're like, oh, yeah, what if you draw 2 when you already have a ton of mana, or draw 3, like they're in a lot of trouble, is that, like, there's the mode of Banefire that it's just turn 2 and you just zing their Llanowar Elf, right? Like, the flexibility on that when you have multiple in your deck, sometimes multiple in your hand earlier in the game, I'm a big fan. I think this card is going to be awesome once again.
Yes. So those are my sleepers. I think Banefire, there's just like no reason for this card not to be like it's wild that it's kind of people are like, oh yeah, it'll be okay. But it's like, wasn't this card insane before and it looks better now?
Oh yeah.
And I really think there's got to be some way to put the Stitcher supplier to serious work. I mean, you don't want to go like even further into the graveyard direction, do you? And use stuff like reassembling skeleton. You know, obviously Scrappy Scrounger is always in the equation, but
yeah, the skeleton was something that I had thought about. I mean, I thought about playing it, just not.
Dude, you even have Death Baron? It's a skeleton, you see? Is there any way that Epicure of Blood might get there? I assume that there's just no good combo with this, right? But there's part of an engine here. I mean, it's expensive and dorky, but the guy's 4 and a black for a 4/4 vampire. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. Now, it doesn't scale 1-to-1, so no matter how much life you gain, your opponent only loses 1 life for it. But if there's some kind of a combo where whenever your opponent loses life, you gain life, you know, which we see, you know, like which we have options for that in more power to formats. I don't think there's one yet, but that'll be something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I agree with your original assessment that this card's a little choppy right now. Like, it's asking for a lot. Like, if you look at something that we were enthusiastic about just, 45 seconds ago, like, a Banefire doesn't ask for anything. It just asks for you to play your deck in the way that you would normally play it. That your opponent will interact with you in a way using cards like Settle the Wreckage to make the Banefire really good. And even if they don't, you're just drawing land and then attacking with your creatures the way that, the guidebook said to do. Banefire is eventually just going to be in a situation where it's going to be able to help you finish the game out as long as the opponent doesn't win first.
Do you think Banefire is going to increase the incentive for people to play blue-black instead of blue-white? To have access to things like Duress and Doomfall, and instead of relying on things like Settle the Wreckage, having access to things like Vraska's Contempt for instant speed life gain?
I think that's obviously way better than blue-white, specifically around Banefire. I don't know if that's the kind of thing that's going to create the impetus, because I don't think Banefire is the kind of thing that leads the format. I think it's the kind of thing that is a great card that is played in decks that are going to do well in the format, but nobody thinks to themselves, it's not that they didn't think that Banefire beat them. They understand what Banefire beat them, but the mental icon they have for the opponent's deck is probably not a Banefire, right? It's whatever their non-glory-bringer creature is, right? Like,
I do think that Banefire is going to steal enough of the spotlight because of how many, 3-pointers at the buzzer it hits for you.
I would be happy if that were the case. I love Banefire. I love the idea that I have low-end cards in hand and I zinger out. It's not even a miracle because I know it's going to resolve, right? And then I draw another one, and then I finish the game that way with 2 big 5s or something like that. Basically, a twin set of lava axes.
Dude, is there any chance the format gets to a spot where Insidious Will shows up? Way back in Kaladesh, the 2 blue counter target spell, or you may choose new targets for target spell, or copy target instant or sorcery spell, you may choose new targets. So it's, fork, deflection, or counter spell. But, like, if you deflection somebody's Banefire,
you can do that.
Yeah, that's filthy.
I mean, that's sideboard card at best, I think.
Yeah. But if people are doing it at all, that's a big game.
Sure.
So, I don't know, man. What are your picks? Anything else besides Banefire? I know we're both super high on that one.
For sure.
One more for the road?
Banefire is, if you want to talk about the overlap between sexy and good, Banefire is probably square there. I'm just really excited about trying out some of these green cards, whether the ramp cards or dinosaurs. I even took a minute to think about Goreclaw, Terror of Calcisma that we talked about a little bit. I'm still not high on it, but I do have a crazy one. It's not badly costed. It's potentially a massive source of card advantage. Probably wouldn't main deck it. I don't know. It seems like you could play it, but you would be.
What's the card?
Chaos Wand. Chaos Wand. 3 colorless artifact. Tap and pay 4. Target opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then put the exiled cards that weren't cast this way on the bottom of that library in a random order. Yeah, so here's my theory, right? Obviously, a Game Day Tome is too slow today. They printed Arcane Encyclopedia as just a make sure you understand this is too slow. But the 4 activation cost of the Chaos Wand isn't like a Game Day Tome. You're getting the card you're getting the actual cost of the card, right? So I don't think that you're going to necessarily main deck Chaos Wand, as that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But imagine you sided Chaos Wand in against a ramp deck, right? And that you cast it on turn 3, then on turn 4 you just tapped and used it, and you got their Hour of Promise. Right?
Well, you could. You're describing both you having the thing, they don't destroy it, you spend turn 4 activating it, and you hit something really good. What if you just hit a Braid?
I mean,
and then you literally must cast it, and then you just abrade your own Chaos Wand.
No, it's a May.
Oh, okay. Well, that's something.
Yeah, but I mean, decks with a Braid will often have a target anyway, right? Like, I obviously the card is named Chaos Wand because it's chaotic, right? But like, I don't know. The most exciting things don't work, right? So you can't just like Chaos Wand somebody and then hit 2 approaches. You'll just gain life with the approaches, not win the game, right? But I just think like there's situations you can be in where you're really going to be able to exploit somebody's deck, and they're not going to have the right kind of pressure to punish you. Like, I think Ramp is a good example. They're not fast on offense, and they have a lot of spells, and their spells are high impact. I think like Blue-White would be a great example, but you just can't actually finish the game with their spells.
Well, it's also going to be so often, like, what are you going to do? Are you just going to Chaos Wand in response to each time they play a spell? And just hope that somehow you're like, oh, okay, I guess this time Censor.
Sometimes it was a counter spell.
Oh, hey, it's Essence Scatter. I guess that's not going to do anything here. Or, oh, I guess Settle the Wreckage. Okay.
Yeah, that's a challenging question. I
agree. I think this card's, it's got chances to. It's. I think it's a surprisingly fringe sideboard card for when you really want to be grinding in matchups where there's a lot of spell-based card advantage.
It's a scalpel, not a hammer, right? But
yes. See, to me, it's neither a scalpel nor a hammer. It's more like dice.
It resembles dice.
Yeah.
Agreed on that one. But I don't know. The fact that you get the card in its cast instead of just drawing the card.
Yeah, it's kind of temporal aperture.
Yeah, like, if anytime you hit a card that's more expensive than its activation cost, I think, like, that's just real good.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, I hope you enjoyed your pre-release weekend. I'm excited to see the impact, of course, that 2019 has on Nico Bolas. Standard. And I will see you next week, man.
All right. Bye, Patrick.
Bye.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge, so jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left